If you are going to be entertaining people over the holidays, or if you're looking to build up your own home bar, you might be wondering, where should you start? What are the essential bottles you should have in your home bar to allow you to make the most cocktails that you will enjoy? Well, I've got you covered in this video. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and I'm going to be taking you through some of the most essential bottles you need to have in your home bar, and then moving on to maybe something else that you might look for down the line as you look to expand the number of cocktails you can make. So let's get right to it. First off, I think you do need to have two different whiskeys. Now I know I am the whiskey nerd, so I might be a little bit biased towards whiskey, but I do think you do need to have two whiskeys because they cover a different range of cocktails. You could look at a bourbon, and if you're looking at a bourbon, there's no real better kind of home bar bourbon than Wild Turkey 101. It's not expensive, but it does come in at 50.5% alcohol or 101 proof. Very good, very kind of middle of the road classic bourbon flavors, and you're going to need that oaky, spicy bite of a bourbon for something like a bourbon Manhattan or those kind of classic cocktails where you use like a vermouth or an aromatized wine, and you need something with a bit of punch and with a bit of bite to stand up to those other kind of spicy ingredients. But on the other hand, if you're looking for something like to make a whiskey sour with, to make those other kind of lighter whiskey cocktails, maybe something where you don't want that oak, where you don't want that bite, but you still want that kind of sweet caramelly whiskey flavor, an Irish whiskey is very good for that purpose. And this I have right here is Roe & Co. Roe & Co is a great little whiskey. It's designed pretty much to be used in cocktails. I always have a spare bottle of Roe & Co in my home bar, and you can see I haven't even opened this bottle yet, so you can tell I always have a bottle of Roe & Co in my home bar because it's great, like I said, for those kind of classic, kind of sweeter cocktails. I wouldn't recommend you start off with a scotch because scotches, they can be a bit kind of hit or miss when it comes to making cocktails. They can have too strong of a presence or the smoke might upset the balance. But if you're going to start off with a home bar, I'd say a bourbon and Irish whiskey is where you need to be for your whiskeys. Next up, you are going to need something like a vodka because there are a lot of cocktails out there that call for vodka. It's pretty much like a neutral alcohol. It does have a little bit of a flavor, but it can often get overpowered by other ingredients, and for that there is no real substitute for a vodka. I know some people don't like vodka, but for me, a personal favorite vodka cocktail of mine is an espresso martini, and you need vodka to make a kind of a classic espresso martini. For me though, I would never go super fancy with a vodka. I think that I'm going to use it not to drink straight, but only in those cocktails where there's a lot of other flavors. So I just use something like Smirnoff. You can get a more expensive, more fancy vodka if you want, but you're not really going to be tasting it in the cocktails that call for it. So I'd always just say go for something kind of simple like a Smirnoff. Then you're going to need something like a gin. Now for me, I always say find a gin you like a lot of gins, they have a similar kind of base flavor, but they do change it out. This here is Silk's Irish Gin. It's from the Bourbon distillery here in Ireland, but there's also great gins from Dingle. There's great gins from a lot of places around the country, and there's also going to be great gins from where you are. So you can support local. You can support a gin that uses kind of the botanicals or the flavors from wherever you are, and you can find one that kind of suits your palate, but you do need a gin for making good cocktails. If you want though a bit of advice, I would say maybe avoid something like this, like a very specifically flavored gin. Now this ginger gin, it's quite nice. I have no problem with it, but it does tend to kind of lean into some flavors in a cocktail. So if I'm making something that calls for like a standard gin, I probably wouldn't use this because that ginger note is very overpowering. It's a little kind of one note. Now when I do want a gingery note in a cocktail, it's fantastic and it works really well, but a more kind of a generic gin that you like is where I'd start off. To round out your selection of like 5 basic bottles that you should have, you could go for something like a white rum, like a Bacardi, or like a spiced rum, like this King Cake rum from the Happy Rapper distillery. But I'd personally say, if you're gonna go for one bottle of rum, go for like a dark rum. This is from the Cologne distillery, but you can get a lot of dark rums from around the world from a lot of different producers. It's kind of a good middle ground between a light rum, which is kind of sometimes can be quite similar to a vodka, especially something like a Bacardi where it's more mass produced, but also it stays away from the heavy spicy notes you get in those spiced rums. Has a bit more flavor, a bit more funk without kind of overpowering all the notes in your cocktails, and it will make for a very good daiquiri. A little bit darker means it's got a little bit more flavor usually. Sometimes they do add, coloring to their rums, but if you find a good kind of medium dark body rum, that's a great bottle to kind of round out your selection. If you've still got space after those 5 essential bottles, you could try picking up something like a Blanco tequila or that spiced rum or the white rum I was mentioning earlier, which will round out the kind of number of cocktails you can make. But you might, if you have a limited space, want to then focus more on the kind of liqueurs or add-ons that you can use to make more cocktails. Like you could start off with an elderflower liqueur or some triple sec, which is an elderflower or an orange liqueur. You might get something like Drambuie, which is a whiskey based kind of herbal liqueur, or you could go for Di Serono, which is an almond based amaretto, or you could say maybe I want a coffee liqueur because I want to make espresso martinis, or you could say, you know what, I'm going to need chartreuse, but then there's green and then there's yellow chartreuse, and suddenly you've got 7 extra bottles on your bar and you've got nowhere to store them. So it can be a bit of a rabbit hole when you are building a home bar, because if you want, let's say, the Di Serono for 1 cocktail, you might only use this for 1 or 2 cocktails. Same with the coffee liqueur, the elderflower, the Drambuie, the chartreuses. You might only use these sparingly every now and then. Now they are liqueurs, so they're pretty much going to last forever. Like, they don't last forever, but they will last a very long time. If you want something like a vermouth, like those kind of aromatized wines, they go in the fridge, but even in the fridge, after about a month, they're going to start losing their flavor. Maybe 3 months is the absolute most you should hold on to them, because then they'll start tasting off. So it can be a bit of a rabbit hole when you build up your home bar, and then suddenly you've got way more bottles. So I always say to focus on the essentials, to focus on what you want to drink. If you're a person who likes old fashions, maybe you don't need the elderflower, maybe you don't need the triple sec, maybe you don't need the coffee liqueur, maybe you just want to focus on an old fashioned with Drambuie, which is called a rusty nail, or an old fashioned with amaretto, which is called a godfather. Maybe you want to use the 2 chartreuses and maybe find out different ways of using them. If you do like whiskey sours, if you do like those kind of fruitier cocktails, maybe bring back the triple sec. Maybe get something like a velvet falernum, which is great in tiki cocktails. But I always say, especially if you've got a limited kind of space in your home bar, focus on the cocktails you like, focus on finding the spirits you like. Only really stock the spirits you like. It's your home bar after all. It's the bar for you. It's not the bar for anyone else. If you don't like something, don't get it. If you don't like tequila, don't get it. If you don't like amaretto, don't get it. So only always focus on the spirits you like, and that way you aren't gonna waste all your money getting cocktail ingredients that you're never gonna use. But those are only my thoughts on what are the essential bottles for a home bar. If you've got different ideas for what you should use for a home bar, let me know down in the comments below. And while you're there, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays. I put out cocktail recipes, mostly focusing on whiskey cocktails, on Fridays, and every now and then I put out different videos like this on Monday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you hit subscribe, and let me know if you've got any ideas for these kind of Monday videos, these kind of alternate types of videos. If there's anything you think I should make, let me know down below, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.